Hi, Steve Earle.
How are you?
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to our studio. Do you feel comfortable in a radio studio after doing a radio show? Does this kind of feel like...
I'm at my second outlet as far as radio goes. So yeah, I dig it. I spent a lot of yesterday programming and taping 2 radio shows. I, did all the prep work on the bus and recorded. I live on the bus when we're touring. I don't go into hotel rooms, but the bus is a little loud for actually recording, and I've got a rig I carry on the road so I can record my shows when it's necessary for me to do them on the road, which 3/4 of the time is necessary for me to do them on the road. I like going into the network when I'm in New York, just because it makes me feel like a real radio person. But most of the time I end up having, because of my day job, I end up recording my shows on a computer out here on the road.
Okay, I want to back up a minute because you brought up something I wanted to ask you about. You live on the bus exclusively when you're on tour?
Yeah, I do. I don't go into hotel rooms. I mean, the band, in this place there is no band. There's just a small crew because I'm touring solo. But myself, and when Allison's touring with me, Allison as well, and our dogs are on the bus.
How many dogs?
2 when Allison's out. And Allison will be here in a little while. She's flying in for the weekend. She's she'll be at the Atlanta show, and she's going to Savannah with us, and then she's flying back from Jacksonville, Florida. She's writing songs for a new record and taking some classes at Parsons, some fashion design classes. And I'm out here touring by my lonesome again, and but it's so it's just me and the blue dog on the bus for most of this tour. But Allison and Petey, who's the Chihuahua that my dog thinks is his dog, they'll be along directly. So usually it's 2 of us and 2 dogs on the bus, but this tour it's me and 1 dog.
Okay, so you're opening tonight at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. You're the first show of the series.
Oh, are we? Well, I saw that. I know it was a venue I had never seen before. I played, my normal digs here are, the Variety Playhouse, and I'm more of a little 5 Points person. I have played Chastain a couple of times. I opened for Bob Dylan there in 1988, and I opened for Jackson Browne there a couple of years ago.
I'm glad you mentioned the Variety Playhouse, because the first time I ever saw you was a show there, and I had just started dating my husband at the time, and he turned me on to your music, and he turned me on to Townes Van Zandt, which I want to talk to you about in a minute. But at the show, it was in the 90s, and you had one of the funniest lines, and it was close to Valentine's Day, and you said, and I hope I get this right, you said, "I've had a lot of wives, had a lot of drummers, and I miss some of those drummers."
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Well, it's one of those things. I mean, did I say that? I probably said something sort of like that. That sounds like something that I would say. I can't. I don't remember anywhere close to everything. Not so much. I mean, some of it's brain damage, and some of it's just my hard drive's starting to fill up. But I don't. In some shit, it just goes away. What are you going to do?
Well, I remember that night, and I also remember, people kept screaming out, "Copperhead Road!" And you address those fans.
I don't. I mean, I play Copperhead Road every night, but I play it when I get ready to play it.
That's right.
It's not. It's one of those things. I've never not played Copperhead Road. I don't think, except for maybe in a couple of, activism-oriented gigs where there wasn't time and I was only playing 1 or 2 songs, or, But I don't know. I don't normally.
Well, I just recently saw an old clip. YouTube is a really funny thing because all these great clips of you, and you were sitting with David Letterman when that song first came out.
Right.
And how you wrote it on the mandolin. And can you tell us a little bit about how you wrote that song? And
it was the first song that I ever. I mean, I didn't play mandolin until I wrote Copperhead Road. I had a mandolin that actually wasn't even mine. It belonged to Jimbo Henson, who's an old friend of mine, a songwriter in Nashville. He co-wrote Hillbilly Highway and a couple of other things that I wrote when I still co-wrote occasionally. And it was just co-writing was something you were sort of coerced into doing in Nashville, and if you were trying to survive there as a songwriter. Jimbo is one of 2 people that I co-wrote a lot of songs. I co-wrote a lot of songs with Jimbo, a lot of songs with a guy named Walter Carter, and also with Alice Randall, who wrote The Wind Done Gone. She was a songwriter for a long time in Nashville, and one of the only people that I co-wrote with. I basically had gotten a hold of a mandolin, so I knew 2 chords, and I wrote Copperhead Road on it. And I'll never forget, we recorded that record in Memphis, and Sam Bush came in to play on another track, and I'm like, I picked him up at the airport and brought him into the studio. We're at Ardent, and just was asking Joe Hardy, who was the engineer, to play him whatever we were working on. We were mixing in the other studio, and it turned out it was Copperhead Road. So here I was playing, the first thing I ever played on mandolin for one of the greatest mandolin players in the world, and just my luck. But it's one of those things. I play in, I still play mandolin. Play a lot better than I did then. I play in 2.5 keys now. But those 2.5 keys, I feel pretty comfortable. But I kind of play mandolin now.
Well, let's move on to your latest record, Towns, which is, I think, a lot of people who love music appreciate Townes Van Zandt and his songwriting. But what would you say about Townes Van Zandt to someone who's never heard of him or doesn't know who he is or what he was about or his songwriting? How would you get somebody into or to appreciate his work the way you do?
Well, he was a blues singer, and I don't mean, in the sense of everything being a 12-bar progression and, the form that we normally associate with the blues, although he could do that. But I think, what me and Guy Clark, who's my other teacher, and Townes have in common is we saw Lightning Hopkins and Mance Lipscomb in the same room at the same time in Houston, Texas in the 70s. And in Townes' case, he really got it. And I think he worried Lightning a little bit. It was just, he really understood what that, this is about. Art's about the ways that we're similar, not about the ways we're different. And, it's not you're talking about yourself when you do art well. And all Townes' songs, I think, are about him. They're about him and his experience, but more than any other writer I know. But he finds the parts of his experience that are universal, and that's what we respond to. And that's what making art is all about. I think artists are also supposed to try to find the largest audience that they can. And it's not about. One thing I learned from Townes was I knew he wasn't doing it for money, and I don't do this for money, and I never have. And I probably made a lot less money than I could have, but I made more money than Townes did, and I think that a lot of that was Townes' fault. I think he shot himself in the foot every chance he got, and I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. He was an alcoholic. He had other things going on, other issues going on. He was also a genius, but those things are all separate issues to me. I don't think they have anything to do with each other. And I think, I know some really well-adjusted, really talented, artists. I also, there's me. I survived, and I had the same disease that he had, and it didn't kill me, and I managed to get sober. And I don't know why he not only couldn't, but never even tried. And I don't know how to explain that. So there's a lot of survivor guilt involved in this record for me, too.
Well, I know tonight you'll be playing a lot of his music, and a couple questions I wanted to ask about some of the stuff that we were talking about on YouTube. So much more of that is out with the films and documentaries about Townes. And
I avoid YouTube.
Why?
The same. I don't read anything about myself, so I don't read articles and magazines. I don't read. I think there's 2 books about me. I haven't read either one of them. I don't read books about Townes because I'm in them. I just don't think it's good for you one way or the other. And YouTube just seems like. I mean, I understand why people are fascinated, but if you do what I do for a living, it's probably particularly dangerous. You're going to find something that hurts your feelings, or you're going to find something that makes you think that
I can see that
you're something more than you are. There's almost no way to win.